Wind speeds are just beginning to ramp up as our incoming winter storm is gathering steam to our south. This will bring heavy snowfall to much of eastern Newfoundland beginning this evening and lasting into Thursday. We'll talk about that in lots of detail after I thank this evening's sponsor, Heave-Away Waste Management.
Come get your duds in order, 'cause we're bound across the water. Heave away, me jollies, heave away. Come get your duds in order, 'cause we're bound to leave tomorrow. Heave away, me jolly boys, we're all bound away.
Satellite imagery shows our low about as good as it can. In fact, it almost looks like it has an eye to it, which mid-latitude cyclones or lows often do when they are intensifying rapidly, like this one is. To its north, the radar is showing the snow beginning to show up to the south of much of the Avalon and Bonavista Peninsulas this afternoon, at least on this kind of high-level view. And as we look at the webcam in Trepassey as of just before 5 p.m., we can see it's not snowing just yet, but I assure you it's not long from starting. In fact, as we switch over to the live radar just before 5 p.m., the color showing up is dark blue, meaning that the intense snowfall is either just about there as I'm talking, or it's going to start literally before you even see this, because it takes me like 20 to 30 minutes for this to get uploaded after I record it. So by the time you watch this, it may very well be snowing in the southeast and southwest Avalon. Now, the wider picture does show that we have some very intense snowfall to our south. In fact, as I switch off the precipitation depiction and we just look at the reflectivity, we can see the darker greens and yellow showing up just south of Cape Race and Cape Pine, indicating those intense snowfall rates of 2 to 5 centimeters per hour. It does look like that is going to work its way further north, obviously, and once the snow starts down in this area of the Avalon, it takes about 3 hours to reach the St. John's Metro. So figure a start time maybe by 8 o'clock, potentially a little earlier, a little later, but I'll watch the radar closely, and I'll likely be having a live stream this evening covering the snow as it does begin to roll into the metro area, and we'll talk more in detail about amounts and questions and all the good stuff that everybody wants to know when we do those lives. It's always a good time. Now, we see this working its way in from south to north, and this is literally just like the tip of the iceberg of this, because the snow moves in now, and it will not stop in some areas, especially on the northern Avalon and the St. John's Metro, until potentially mid-morning on Thursday. But the bulk of it is going to fall from tonight through tomorrow morning. We catch a little break. I don't know if it's going to stop. Maybe it goes to drizzle. Maybe it stays light snow for some of tomorrow, and then it picks back up in intensity again tomorrow afternoon and lingers that way into Thursday morning, which is why the snowfall forecast has gone up, which is something I mentioned yesterday was a possibility. So right now temperatures are near zero for much of Newfoundland, which means as the snow moves in, it's going to be wet, and it looks like it stays wet snow, meaning it's going to be heavy, dense snow to move, but for most of us, it shouldn't rain on top of the snow. Now we look at the forecast lows across the province overnight. Notice how it's mild even in Labrador. For much of Newfoundland, lows only as cold as like 0 to -4 or -5. And then we look at the forecast for tomorrow. Highs east, central, northeast near 0 or a tad above, indicating again wet snow. Even in Labrador tomorrow, highs of only -2 to about -4. Now, ahead of the incoming winter storm, Environment Canada has issued several different winter storm warnings for eastern and northeastern Newfoundland. For St. John's, the Avalon North, we're under an orange level winter storm warning for winds gusting as high as 80 or 90 kilometers per hour and snowfall totals between 25 and 50 centimeters. And oftentimes, or sometimes, my forecasts will differ a little bit from what the meteorologists at the EC office in Gander are thinking. And there are some very smart meteorologists there, dare I say, smarter than me. Definitely smarter than me. But oftentimes our forecasts will not exactly line up, but my thinking is right with theirs this go around. Further south, we're going to see a little bit less snow. So Avalon southeast, southwest under a yellow level winter storm warning for up to 30 centimeters of snow. And same thing for Clarenville, Bonavista, Terra Nova, Gander, and Bonavista North. That being said, I do think the Bonavista Peninsula will see more than 30 centimeters of snow, especially up towards the Bonavista area. So we'll get into that in just a second. But let's talk about the weather headlines first. So what are we looking at? Well, snow arrives this evening. It continues the way into Thursday morning. What that's supposed to say is all the way into Thursday morning. And if I proofread my stuff, I would have caught that before being 4 or 5 minutes into this forecast. So we're just going to keep chugging. I'm a normal person. I have typos all the time. I'm sorry about that. Snowfall rates most intense will be late tonight to early Wednesday, and then Wednesday evening and light with lighter rates between, especially for the Metro and the Avalon North. What about the wind? Well, gusts of 80 to 100 from the north for eastern and northeastern areas beginning to late tonight and continuing through the day tomorrow. Now, is there anything that can go wrong in this forecast? Sure. Is it likely to, based on my estimation right now? No, I think my forecast now is pretty locked in. Sometimes there's a lot of uncertainty with this. My forecast confidence right now is fairly high from everything I've looked at. Now, when we talk about when it's going to snow, right, and what that is going to look like, well, I showed this to you yesterday, and this shows us how much snowfall we're going to see between tonight and 6 a.m. Thursday. So the totals there are running totals. So by the time we get to Thursday morning, that's how much snow should have roughly fallen in the kind of lower to mid elevations of the St. John's metro area, somewhere between 30 and 40 centimeters. Some areas are going to see more than that, and there is certainly the potential for more than that. So I don't want you to get too caught up on the actual values that you see here. What I want you to know is that we're going to see significant snowfall in this time frame here between about midnight and noon tomorrow. That's where we're going to make a good deal of our snow, because notice it goes from 5 centimeters at roughly midnight to up to 20 at midday tomorrow. Most of that falls generally between midnight and about 6 a.m. or so. And then we catch a little bit of a break, because notice as we go into between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m., we're only picking up 3, 4, or 5 centimeters of snow, but then we pick up more tomorrow evening, tomorrow night into Thursday morning. So again, those are kind of the two waves that I was talking about. That being said, if we see more consistent and persistent snow tomorrow, these totals are going to be higher than what you see here on your screen. Again, I don't want you to get too caught up on the value here. I'm just trying to show you when the heaviest snow is most likely to fall, and we can see that by when those bars get bigger faster. And when they stay the same, we're not seeing those intense snowfall rates, right? So when we talk about the amounts, that range is still very valid. So here's what I'm thinking as of just after 5 o'clock this evening. So for the Bonavista Peninsula, not including Clarenville, Avalon North, St. John's Metro, 30 to 50 centimeters and locally more. And you're going to hear this, you're going to see this, and you're going to say, yesterday you were saying 20 to 30, and now you're potentially saying we could see double that, right? The potential of 60 is there for mainly the higher elevations. And if we're going to see that 50 plus, it's the inland areas over higher terrain. Lower elevations are going to be on the lower end of that range. However, what happened was, and I can get into this a little more during the live stream later, the forecast changed just a touch, meaning the storm looked like it's going to intensify a little faster than it did yesterday and be a touch further east, which means we get less dry air and we get more snow for longer because it intensifies faster, it slows down closer to eastern Newfoundland rather than moving a little bit further north and then slowing down as it's away from us. Getting into the meteorological details, if you're inclined to that sort of thing, the mid-level trough strengthens faster and slows down sooner, which is essentially why the snowfall forecast went up. Yesterday morning, I was very confident that was not going to be the case, but now that is essentially going to be the case, unless this forecast is wrong, which is always possible. That's why it's a forecast, not a guarantee cast. We look at the Burin Peninsula, which yesterday did not have a lot of snow in the forecast, still doesn't. We're in that 2 to 5 range, but it's not 0 anymore. And then we look toward the northeast coast, Clarenville, Port Blandford, Glovertown, Salvage, Lumsden, Carmanville, down to Gander. That area is now 15 to 30 centimeters, okay? Once we're west of like the Lewisport Junction Road, where you kind of take that cutoff right before Bishop's Falls and near Norris Arm, that's where we're going to drop down to 5 to 15, which goes to Grand Falls, Windsor, Badger, Springdale, up onto the Baver Peninsula area. And then once we're west of there, we're looking at not much snow from this, a trace to about 2 centimeters. Buckins, Millertown, probably closer to 2 centimeters than a trace. but western, southwestern Newfoundland, you're not going to see much. You might see some on Thursday. In fact, some of central will see more snow. It looks like some of central will see the bulk of this potentially Wednesday into Thursday, with light snow persisting maybe into the weekend in that area. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. Let's just get through this first round first. A lot going on. All right, so here's future radar and cloud cover. This is what we're going to see as we go through the next roughly 36 hours or so. So we start this evening, 6 o'clock. There's the snow over the southeast Avalon. By 9 p.m., it's over the metro, the Avalon North. By midnight, it pushes back to the west, Bonavista Peninsula, Clarenville, almost to the town of Terra Nova, almost to like Traytown and the Gambo areas, but very, very light at that time. Areas east of there, it's snowing pretty good. By tomorrow morning, we're still seeing snow on the Avalon and the Bonavista Peninsulas, and it's going to be coming down pretty heavy. This is when we're going to see those rates of 2 to 5 centimeters per hour in conjunction with winds gusting over 80. So it's going to be pretty gnarly tomorrow morning. Once we get through 7, 8 a.m., the rates look like they are going to back off on the Avalon and the Bonavista Peninsulas. That's when Gander, back to Grand Falls, Windsor, Northeast Coast, sees the intense snowfall pretty well. Not doing much on the Burin Peninsula at that time. And the southern Avalon may see light snow or even some rain tomorrow during the mid part of the day. Now, tomorrow between like noon and 5 or 6, we're going to see how far north the kind of southern tip of the snowfall goes, because right now it looks like that stays over the St. John's area and the Avalon North. But if that lifts further north, that will impact snowfall amounts a little bit and will be on the lower end of the 30 to 50 scale. But at that point, it's still snowing in the Bonavista area. It's snowing back as far west as like Green Bay, White Bay. Even parts of the Northern Peninsula are seeing snow kind of at that time. But what we're going to watch tomorrow evening, and I'll kind of grab my little cursor here so you can see, we're going to watch this dip back down to the south. So as we go into 8, 9 o'clock, even if it's snowing lightly on the Avalon before then, it comes back in tomorrow evening. So if we're going to get the old comments, where's the storm? It's likely going to be tomorrow afternoon. It's unreasonable to expect it to snow heavily for like 36 hours straight when we have these lows coming in. It just doesn't happen. The snow kind of ebbs and flows, and we can pinpoint pretty well when those ebbs are going to be and when the flows are going to be, meaning the more intense snowfall rates, right? Late tonight, tomorrow morning, tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening, into Thursday morning. And as we go into Thursday morning, it's still snowing, and even by midday Thursday, it still might be snowing lightly on parts of the Avalon. So if I were to do like a snow dayometer for much of eastern, northeastern Newfoundland tomorrow, I'd have that pegged like 100%. For Thursday, it's not unreasonable to think of a delay or maybe even another snow day depending on how much we get. Because again, areas that end up on the higher end of the spectrum here, we're talking close to 2 feet of snow. It's going to be a lot. Any way you slice it, it's a lot. Even 30 is a lot, right? 30 centimeters of heavy, wet snow is a lot. Timing out the wind speeds, we go through time here. We'll see those winds ramping up by tomorrow morning. They're going to peak during the mid part of the day tomorrow, 80, 90 kilometers per hour, locally gusting as high as 100. Once we get through 6, 7 o'clock tomorrow evening, those wind speeds will begin to come down, and we'll see them really begin to come down by Thursday morning. And even by Thursday morning, again, we're still seeing some snow. And as this initial low pulls away, more energy rotates around it, and it looks like there's still snow in the forecast for some of eastern, central, northeast Newfoundland later Thursday, Thursday night, potentially into Friday, and perhaps more snow on the way for Sunday. Look at the forecast for central. Snow and snow showers all the way through Tuesday, highs -1 to -2. Western areas, you're going to see a little bit of snow shower or snow flurry activity over the weekend, but nothing major, maybe mid next week. A more potent system comes in for the Northern Peninsula. A little bit of snow, a little bit of flurry activity, but nothing major. At least that's how it looks right now. For Labrador, we look at the 7-day forecast. Next chance of significant snow looks like it might be Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, but before then, the weather is pretty timid across much of the big land and cold, which is not necessarily a bad thing because I think Cane's Quest gets underway on Sunday, which weather looks pretty decent for the snowmobilers, no major weather. Hopefully it's smooth sailing. I think the Briar also starts next week at some point. 27th, I think. I should know this. Anyway, good stuff. All good stuff. Anyway, I digress. I talk about the weather. That's what I know. If you want my latest forecast in chronological order, best thing to do is either check my website, heave-away.ca, or just get the app. Every time I put a new forecast out, you get a push alert, and you get lots of push alerts about the incoming weather, weather makers, and kind of anything I want to tell you about without being too bothersome. Sheerweather.ca. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe. On Facebook, give me a follow. Have a very, very good Tuesday evening. I'll likely be doing a live stream tonight. Time frame, I would aim probably between 8:30 and 9, and I'll have an update before that to tell you when that's going to be. Have a very good evening. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for updates.